All right, Senator Thatcher, let's start with an overall question. Why are you the qualified candidate for the job?
I have spent the last 16 years of my legislative career dealing with good government issues, accountability in government, transparency, all kinds of things dealing with the Secretary of State's office directly. And not only that, I am a business owner. I've been a business owner for 28 years. I would know how to manage a large organization such as the Secretary of State's office. Plus, I know what small businesses go through. That's what propelled me to pass a bill in 2011 that led to the creation of the Small Business Advocate in the Secretary of State's office in 2013. So I have the business background plus legislative experience and dedication to the job, and just a really strong desire to carry on in the same vein that the former Secretary of State, Dennis Richardson, did.
Am I wrong? I feel like I'm having deja vu. I think I interviewed Senator Fagan yesterday, and I thought she took credit for passing the small business
She
office.
did. Yeah, I know she has. But in 2011, I passed a bill that directed the Oregon Department, I think it was Business Oregon, I believe it was, to explore the feasibility of putting a business ombudsman within state government and finding the best location for it. Well, they changed it from ombudsman to advocate because nobody likes the word ombudsman. And so then it was determined that in 2013, that's where it would go, is in the Secretary of State's office.
Gotcha. And you were involved in both pieces of legislation?
Yes.
Gotcha. Why are you a better person for the job than Senator Fagan?
I have the experience, plus I have a dedication to making it a nonpartisan office. I have said all along that I would make it a nonpartisan office, and that I promised or pledged to adopt what was put into Initiative Petition 57 and adopting this independent redistricting, which is also something that Secretary of State Dennis Richardson was working on. And I had all along said that we need to take the partisan process out of it and begin with a people-driven process. And that's what I really like about the initiative petition that didn't make it to the ballot. But as Secretary of State, I can adopt that as the process that I would use if it gets to my office.
So you're talking about the redistricting after the census, and if the legislators can't come to an agreement on redistricting, which they've had trouble doing, and it falls to your office, your plan for redistricting.
Yes, exactly.
So can you explain your plan a little bit more?
Well, that's where you get the nonpartisan people, non-political people, I should say, people who have not been involved in the legislature, people who aren't lobbyists and have a vested interest in how the lines might be drawn. They would get together, they would have they would determine how the process is to proceed. And then they would go ahead and choose the people who would serve as the arbiters of what the lines should look like. And there would be, as it was put into Initiative Petition 57, there would be 4 people from the first or the biggest major party, and then the second biggest major party, 4 people there, and then 4 people from other parties or nonpartisan people who don't belong to any parties. And they would all have to agree. There would have to be buy-in from each of these groups to move forward with a plan.
Gotcha. Let's talk about election security. Bev Clarno and Dennis Richardson both are adamant that our election process here is safe. What do you think?
I have never met anybody with more integrity than Secretary of State Dennis Richardson. When he says that, I believe him. And so we have a lot of safeguards in place other states may not have. So when you hear about problems, it's probably because they don't have a safeguard in place that we have. I do think it would be worthwhile to do a top to bottom look at every step of the elections process, just to make sure that we do maintain and keep the best process and keep the best procedures in place. So we're not leaving ourselves open to any problems. But I also think it'd be good to do, little random spot checks just to keep things, make sure that we're not developing any sort of problems that need to be nipped in the bud right away.
In my circle of friends, my friends who support President Trump, they hear him talk about election insecurity, and they're pretty certain in their mind that Oregon has a problem with election security. Are they wrong?
I hear the same things, and that's where I say we need to do a look. Just, we don't know what we don't know. I don't know that the elections process has been evaluated and scrutinized from the position of a white hat hacker, if you will, somebody who would look at a particular procedure and say, well, this is how it can be gamed or whatever. But elections are so important, and people do need to have confidence that the results are true, that there wasn't any fraud that resulted in a change in, that resulted in somebody getting elected or a ballot measure being passed that shouldn't have been, had it been, looked at more carefully. I do hear things, absolutely. That's why I think it is worthwhile just making sure that we do have the best safeguards in place, and that we add more if we need to, or if we change procedures slightly to make things more secure.
But you do believe things are secure.
I do believe that, but I think that they've looked at one part of the voting process, and I would like to look at all of it just to make sure. That's it.
Bev Clarno's office told me that a new computer system is supposed to be on board for the election process in 2023. The current system is 16 years old. Is that soon enough?
There are ways of upgrading the system we have or replacing it. And I have not evaluated which would be the best way to go yet. But I know that there was some money given to the Secretary of State's office, I think from federal money, that allowed for an update of the Oregon centralized voter registration system. I think that's what you're referring to. Mm-hmm. And so we do have a process of being able to upgrade internally or being able to adopt a brand new process. They both have their drawbacks, and they both have their, positive aspects. So I'll have to make a further determination as we get down the road.
Okay. I asked you this before, and I've asked all the candidates this before, but I asked you for the primary. Do you want to be governor? A lot of people see this office as a stepping stone to governor.
Yeah, they do. If I get elected Secretary of State this November, you will not see my name on the ballot for governor in 2022. I want to finish my term as Secretary of State, and barring any weird things happening, which only happened 3 times in our history where the Secretary of State had to leave their office to go serve as governor, barring anything like that, which would be very unusual, I plan to serve as Secretary of State for my full term, and we'll go from there.
Okay. We talked about this also before the primary. I want to know if your thoughts have changed. Will you push for election day postmarks to count on Oregon ballots in the state of Washington?
Yeah, I still think that's a good idea. I think that after having some discussions with the county clerks, that they may prefer something along the line of maybe the Saturday before the election, but I think it would behoove us to look at postmarks where if people put it in the mail and the post office is taking a long time, it's kind of out of the hands of the voter, but they did vote in time. So that needs to be taken into consideration.
Gotcha. I was looking at the amount of money raised in this race. All the candidates, including the primary combined, have raised about $2.3 million. I have to think, and my initial research shows this is the most expensive Secretary of State race in Oregon history. Why is that, and does it concern you?
Well, I've raised about $300 and some odd $1,000, so that tells you where the rest of it's going. My opponent has raised almost $1 million from just a handful of voters. I mean, fewer than two handfuls of voters, or donors, I should say. And it's mostly public sector unions, plus she raised $50,000 from the governor, which to me, I see that as a conflict of interest. It's perfectly legal, but it's kind of odd that the governor, whose agencies the Secretary of State would have the authority to investigate and audit, the head of those agencies would be donating to the person that would be auditing. Anyway, just seems like a little conflict. But yeah, there is a lot of money in this. I think the Democrats would like to take it back. They don't want to have a Republican in there. And that's too bad. I really feel like Dennis Richardson raised the bar, and he showed people that a Republican can do this job and hold government in check and do all that is necessary as a Secretary of State to make sure things are fair, even-handed, and nonpartisan.
I asked Senator Fagan whether, because one of her platforms is campaign finance reform, but meanwhile she has, my figures show 1.2 million raised so far, which is you at 469. So she has almost 3 times as much money as you have raised, more than all the other candidates combined. Do you see that as a conflict in her stance?
Well, it does seem a little odd, and also, I don't know. I really like the fact that in 107, they want to make sure things are transparent. So you don't have an unaccountable group getting together, creating a new PAC, sounding like they're, a neutral party, and that they're really just in the tank for one candidate. That happened. My opponent benefited from that deception during her primary, and I just can't imagine if and she didn't denounce it. She was proud of it. So it does seem a little hypocritical to me.
Have you been able to tell whether you faced any backlash from voters over your participation in the Republican walkout earlier this year?
I'm sure there would be. But what I think needs to be pointed out as well is that this was to protect voters and stand up for their rights to be able to weigh in. We have we have had a robust initiative and referendum process in Oregon for about 100 years. And this referendum process was being absolutely cut off by the people in the legislature that did not want people to weigh in. They didn't want to hear their voice. They didn't want to have them be able to weigh in and say, no, we don't like this bill. They did not want to hear from them, which if that had been allowed to go to the voters, there would not have been what you saw happen during the 2019 and 2020 sessions.
Senator Fagan is out with a new attack ad on you about your business, saying a court decision over your business that you're fined $63,000. What's your response to that ad?
First of all, it was not a fine. We had dropped the case, and an outside settlement had come in that day. We dropped the case and ended up having to pay for some of the costs of their defending the case. ODOT was the defendant in this case. You wouldn't know that from the article, but they weren't paying their bills, and we did bring them to court, and we had to pay for their cost of defending the case, and that was their accountant. So anyhow, I think it's a detraction. She does not want to focus on the fact that, or she doesn't want to talk about the fact that only a few of her donors have donated to her campaign, almost $1 million, and that she's gotten $50,000 from the governor, and that she would not really be, she is beholden, and she would be less likely to hold the government accountable in that case. So I think it's just that she doesn't want to talk about, her deceptions and her lying in her own campaign finance or her own campaign material in the voters pamphlet, and that she has been used her position to get out of a ticket or try to get out of a ticket, a speeding ticket. And, there's a whole bunch of things where she has not been very truthful. So she has not told you that we still do business with ODOT. And any of those allegations had been true, we'd be out of business. We would not still be providing vital highway safety services to ODOT.
How do you break through to voters in a primarily blue state the way that Dennis Richardson did? What is your path to getting this office?
Just getting the word out. I need to meet with people, and that's what I've been doing. I need to talk to people, need to get the word out that I really want to continue in the vein that Dennis Richardson did. And I want to continue raising the bar of the Secretary of State's office and focus on accountability in government and transparency in government. Those are things I've been working on for a long, long time. I'm on the Public Records Advisory Council. I started the Oregon Transparency Commission, working across the aisle and getting the state's checkbook online, just trying to get more of that transparency. I would like to see more public records get online where possible. That was something Dennis Richardson was also trying to work on. There's just a number of things that I have experience in that if people knew, they would see that I am the better candidate when you compare our records.
Senator, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just that I did get endorsed also by the Independent Party of Oregon as I got their nomination. So I think that also bodes well and shows people that I am seen as the less partisan candidate, that's for sure. I have been dedicated to being nonpartisan and adopting redistricting from the beginning. It's only been recently that my opponent has decided to jump on board with that. So kind of interesting.
Senator Thatcher, thank you very much.
Thank you.